Hey guys, happy Tuesday. Go ahead and get out your math notebook. And we are on a new topic. We are on topic 14. Alyssa, you can't sit over there. Okay. Alright, we're going to start off this topic actually with a lot of vocab. We're going to go ahead and write down all of our vocab for the whole topic. This is actually a short topic. We're going to get through it in about 6-7 days. Okay, it's not a very complex topic. It's one that you guys have done a lot in the past of, and I think you guys are gonna do just fine. So, in your math notebook, I want you to write down these vocab words with definitions. I'll get out of your way in just a minute. Yeah, there are a lot of vocab words, but we're doing them all at once and then we're going to be done.
What's a car? Oh.
I think we got 8. Yes, these are not going to be new words for you. When you guys go up in grade, sometimes it doesn't mean that you get necessarily new material. It's that we're expanding and mastering the material that we've already learned, okay? And that's a lot of these vocab words. These are not new, but we need to master them and know them even more than what we did in the past, okay? So, all right, 8 vocab words here. I want you using your iPad, use Safari, look them up. I will say make sure when you're looking these up that you look them up in the math term, okay? So you might even look up, for example, coordinate grid math, okay? So maybe a coordinate grid for maybe social studies doesn't pop up instead. Sample could be related to science, taking samples for science labs, okay? So make sure you look for it in the math term. All right, I'm gonna give you guys a couple minutes to be working on that. And then we will discuss them. Everybody's writing these down, guys. Nobody is just sitting right now. Raise your hand if you're still working. Okay. Raise your hand if you're still working. Okay. No, you should not have to actually. Yeah, you're off. You're good. Like plans, yeah. Just move on. Yeah, no problem. All right, you too. Bye. Ladies and gentlemen, raise your hand if you're still working. All right, let's go ahead and start going over these. All right, so we have data. All right, what does that mean, data? Bradley?
Data is a collection of facts.
A collection of facts. Yeah, it could be a data about How many people like pizza in our classroom? How many people have animals? It could be about your basketball team. What's the average number of points somebody scored in the basketball games? Okay, good. What about survey? What does that mean, survey? Mimi?
Survey is a tool or list of questions.
Yeah, a question or questions used to gather that information that makes our data. What about sample? Ben?
A sample is like a sample.
A sample is like a sample. That's true. Give me a definition without using the word in it. Raina?
Find as possible values.
Possible values. Good. So it's when people surveyed represent a larger group. Okay, those people that would be a sample. And it's usually selected randomly. Outlier. This is going to be a number that does not fit the group. It is different. So for example, if I had two, four, three, 7, 596. What number there is just different? It really stands out from the rest of the numbers. Justice? 596. Yeah, these four numbers are all single digits, all closer to each other. That 596, so it is way different than those other data numbers I have there. Good. What about a line plot? What is a line plot? Mason?
A linear graph that shows data.
A graph that's in the shape of a line that shows data. Good. What about a bar graph? Alyssa? A graph that organizes your data so it's easily to see. Yep, and it uses bars, hence bar graph. What about a frequency table? Justice? Good. So this is a table that uses numbers to show how many times a response occurs. Still showing a different way of showing our data. And what about a coordinate grid? Coordinate grid. Justice. Very nice. All right, ladies and gentlemen, if you missed any of your vocab words, you need to make sure they get in your math notebook. I want you... We're going to be going to Schoology. I want to show you something on Schoology. Lights, please. And under Schoology, if you go to math, I want to point out here on the bottom, it says graph types. Now, a couple different types of graphs that we talked about, we had a line plot, a bar graph, a frequency table, a coordinate grid. There are still other types of graphs. And even with these ones I'm showing you, there are still more, okay? We have a tally chart. We have a pie chart in the shape of a circle. We have a pictograph that uses pictures to represent data. We have a dot plot.
The line
Plot.
The line
A dot plot.
The line plot looks like those rating things that they have in the business.
Yeah, the line plot, it looks like your heart when it measures. Do like that thing.
I don't know. What
All right, and I have a video for us that we're gonna watch that also has some more data on it. Yeah, Khan Academy. Do you guys know Khan Academy has math?
Yeah.
Yeah. And we don't do much with the Khan Academy for math, but guys, if you're ever having trouble, Khan Academy is great for math. They have some great lessons. I just don't use it as much with you guys because I have other ones that I like more, like the Math Antics, the Number Rock. But Khan Academy is still a great one. Oh, I gotta get sound.
Represent data. what I want to do in this video is think about all of the different ways that we can represent data. So right over here, we have a list of, and I'm just using this as one form of data, a list of student scores on, say, the last test. So Amy got 90% right, Bill got 95% right, Cam got 100% right, Efra also got 100% right, and Farah got 80% right. This is one way to show data. Remember, data is just recorded information, and it could be numeric like this, it could be.
Ladies and gentlemen, so recognize the pronunciation. He is saying data. I pronounce it data. It's the same thing. It's kind of like tomato, okay? Potato, yep.
Quantitative, so you're recording actual numbers, or it could even be things, you could record data on how did they like the test, and they could have scored it based on I really liked it, I kind of liked it, I didn't like it. Or they might have rated it on a scale of 0 to 5, which would have been numbers, but it's numbers that are measuring people's opinions, as opposed to here we have numbers that are measuring their actual scores. So there's all different types of data, and I don't want to get into all of that. But let's just start thinking about different ways to represent this data. So this is one way. You could view this as a table where you have the name, and then you have the score. So you have your name column, and then you have your score column, and I could construct it as a table. So clearly it looks like a table like that. That's one way, one very common way of representing data, just like that. That's actually how most traditional databases record data, in tables like this. But you could also do it in other ways. So you could record it as a oftentimes called a bar graph, or sometimes a histogram. So you could put score on the vertical axis here, and then you could have your names over here. And let's see the scores. Let's see, maybe they'll make this a 50. Actually, let me just mark them off. So this is 10, 20, 30, no, that's too big. 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90. So that's, and then 100. So that's 100. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That would be 50 right over there. And then you could go person by person. So Amy got a 90 on the exam, so the bar will go up to 90. So that is Amy, and then you have Bill, who got a 95. So it's going to be between 90 and 100, so it's going to be right over there. Bill got a 95, and so it would look like this. Bill, so that is Bill. And then you have Cam, who got 100 on the exam. So make sure, obviously I'm hand drawing it, so it's not as precise as if I were to do it on a computer. So this right over there, that is Cam's score. Efra got the same score as Cam. So her score is going to be, let me do that in the color, in Efra's color. And that's Efra's score right now. There, she also got 100. So Efra, and then finally Farah got an 80. So 67, 80. So Farah got an 80. So this is Farah's score right over here. So this is another way of representing the data. And here we see it in visual form, but it has the same information. You can look up someone's name and then figure out their score. Amy scored a 90. Bill scored a 95. Cam scored 100. Efra also scored 100. Farah scored an 80. There's even other ways you can have some of this information. In fact, sometimes you might not even know their names, and so then it would be less information, but it might just be a list of scores. The professor would say, hey, here are the 5 scores that that people got on the exam, and they would list 90, 95, 95, 100, 100, 100, and 80. Now, if it was listed if this was all of the data you got, this would be less information than the data that's in this bar graph or this histogram, or the data that's given in this table right over here. Because here, not only do we know the scores, but we know who got what score. Here, we only know the list of scores. But there's even other ways, and this is not an exhaustive video of all of the different ways you can represent data. You could also represent data by looking at the frequency of scores. So frequency of scores right over here. So instead of writing the people, you could write the scores. So let's see, you could say this is 80, 85, 90, 95, and 100. And then you could record the frequency that people got these scores. So how many times do you have a score of an 80? Well, Farah is the only person with a score of 80, so you put one data point there. No one got an 85. One person got a 90, so you put a data point there. One person got a 95, you could put that data point right over there. And then two people got 100. So this is 1 and 2. Let's see, the other 100 is in this color, so I'm just doing the color. You wouldn't necessarily have to color code it like this. So this is another way to represent, and this is, on this axis you could just view this as the number. So this tells you how many 80s there were, how many 90s there are, how many 95s, and how many hundreds. So this right over here has the same data as this list of numbers. It's just another way of looking at it. And once you have your data arranged in any of these ways, we can start to ask interesting questions. We can ask ourselves things like, well, what is the range of data? What is the range in the data? And the range is just the spread between the lowest point and the highest point. So the range in this data is going to...
And we've talked about range, guys. Do you remember when we talked about mean, median, mode, range? Yeah, so those are words, and when you look at your data, that you can use then to help understand your data more, to comprehend it more, okay? To see some of those numbers, to help pull those numbers easily.
The difference between the highest score, and the highest scores are 100, and the lowest score, an 80. So the range is going to be the difference between the max minus the min. The maximum score minus the minimum score. So it's going to be 100 minus 80 is equal to 20. So that gives you a sense of things. It kind of gives you a sense of spread. You could also ask yourself, well, how many people scored below 100? And these are just interesting questions. Below 100.
How many
And you
scores
can
below
actually
100?
answer that question.
Everybody?
Well, actually, you could answer either of these questions with any of these different ways of looking at the data. If you say how many people scored below 100, well, 1, 2, 3. How many people scored below 100? Well, 100 is up here, so it's going to be 1, 2, 3. How many people scored below 100? 1, 2, 3. How many people scored below 100? 1, 2, 3.
So sometimes data, so you are seeing the same data just in different formats, and this is going to be one of those things, guys, that's going to be your preference, okay? Sometimes choosing data, which kind of graph you're using depends on sometimes the data. Sometimes some graphs are easier to make with certain numbers, and sometimes it's just your preference of what kind of view you like for that data.
Are you proud of us that we can count to 3?
I'm so proud of you that you can count to 3.
Yeah.
If that's all we've learned in math, though, that I'm not as proud, though, if that's all we can do.
If you can only count to 3, then you
I know you guys know
3.
lots.
And so any way you look at it, you would have gotten 3. And you could also ask yourself, what is the most frequent score? So most frequent. Most frequent.
What number is
And once
most
again,
frequent?
you can answer that question with
100,
any of these
good.
ways of representing this data. You could look at our original table and you say, look, there's only 190, 195, 180, there's 200s. So you'd say, look, there's the most frequent score is 100. You'd see that over here too. You actually have 200s. There's only one of each of the other scores. Here you also see the 200s. And here is probably the clearest if you're looking at frequency. Sometimes this might be called a frequency plot, and sometimes it's called sometimes the official, well, it's often called a frequency plot.
Yeah, stop.
And you see here the most
What
frequent one
happens?
is the one that has the most dots on it, which is 100. So anyway, that's just a very high level overview of how you can look at data and different ways to represent data. But the one thing I really want you to get from this is that these are all different ways of representing the same data. And we could probably invent other ways of doing it as well.
All right, so ladies and gentlemen, lights, please. Do you guys have any questions for me so far on data? We're gonna start making some of our own data. You're actually gonna have a project instead of a test on data. I know you guys have done them before, but like I said, I want to be able to dive in deeper on them and get a better, master it more. Okay? Your guys' homework tonight is a vocabulary on what is data. All right? Any questions?
What is data?
What is data? That is the question. All right, guys, go ahead and get started.